Welcome back to Schill Brothers Outdoors. I'm Kevin. I'll be your host for today's gear video. We shoot these every year, and every year we do them, we're like, we're never gonna shoot it again because how often can your gear change? But we swap out so much gear on a year-by-year basis that we are doing the 2021. Hopefully this year is better than 2020. 2021 gear loadouts. Let's get into it. But first, make sure you subscribe. Make sure you check out our podcast, Backcountry BSing, and we have our own channel for that. Subscribe to that. We got super sick merch if you want. And I think that's it. Back to the video. So in this video, I'm going to go through basically the loadout I'm going to use the most this year, but I do have other loadouts that I will use mainly in the winter or some sort of specialty trips. So I'm going to go through that as well. Not as in-depth as the everyday loadout, but this is the loadout that I've got on the table that I'm going to use for probably 80 to 90% of the trips this year. This is a solid 3-season loadout, and we do a lot of winter camping, and lately we've gotten into hammock camping, so we'll go through that at the end. But let's go through 2021 3-season loadout, TRT, baby. That stands for Tahoe Rim Trail, the big trail I'm doing this year. We'll start off with a couple new items for this year. So finally I was able to get my hands on a 4-inch sleeping pad. So yes, this is going to be a tent setup. Now I do still hammock camp. I'm going to go through my hammock camping setup, but for the big trip this year, the Tahoe Rim Trail, 11 days, 180 miles, it might not be feasible because of the geography to hammock camp it. So I'm going to tent camp it. So that's why the official gear loadout video is a tent loadout, but I still hammock camp, and I'll go through my hammock setup and I'll talk about when I use it. And before you ask, the total base weight of all of this, excluding camera gear, is about 11 pounds, a little bit less. And that's because this is a tent setup. It's not ultra light. I got the chair, I got a 4-inch sleeping pad that's insulated, but it's still a pretty good lightweight setup, 11 pounds. With the camera gear, it's about, 14-ish pounds, and camera gear got a massive overhaul this year. So I'm going to talk about that too, but the base weight of just the camping equipment is about 11 pounds. First new item, sleeping pad. Shout out to Devin at Backcountry Exposure. He turned me onto this. This is a Thermarest Topo Luxe 4-inch insulated sleeping pad. I've only used it once. It is definitely 3-season. I used it in like the upper 20s, and it was a little chilly, but it's super comfortable, and I love the valve system on this. Thermarest absolutely crushed the valve system on this. So sleeping pad, Thermarest Neo Air Topo Luxe. Next new item of this year, and we got this at the end of last year. This is the quilt I'll be using this year. This is an Underground Quilts Bandit 40-degree, long top quilt. I've used this a couple times. You can use this into the 30s. It is so comfortable. This thing weighs about 15 ounces. It's super light, super packable. You all know how much we love Underground Quilts. I just wanted something. A 20 degree is too warm for some of the stuff we do, and it's just too heavy. So 40 degree is like the sweet spot quilt for us. For anything from spring through fall, we can get by with 40 degrees because of Ohio, and love these quilts. Looking forward to using it more this year. One of the few things that's not changing as my primary loadout of choice is I'm still rocking this Light AF Curve 40 pack. And this year I'm actually going with the Light AF hip belt pockets on it. The primary reason being, and we'll get to my camera gear, but my current camera cannot fit in the fanny pack. So I'm going with the hip belts, and I used to use Z-Packs hip belts, but I finally, that just felt traitorous to use the Z-Packs hip belts on a Light AF pack. Got the Light AF pouches here, and something I don't have on the pack yet because I need to put it on is I am using a Peak Designs capture clip for the camera. So Light AF Curve 40 with the Light AF hip belt pockets and a Peak Designs capture clip on the shoulder. Last of the big three, and this should be no surprise. I love this tent. The Z-Packs Ultiplex will be the tent of choice this year. I also have the Durston X-Mid 2P. That's a great tent. It's a winter tent. I don't need to use it in the summer. This thing weighs 15 ounces. I got a bunch of videos on this tent. Check it out. I love it. And that kind of, you know, encapsulates my big three. So Underground Quilt Zeppelin 40 degree, Thermarest Neo Air Topo Lux sleeping pad, Z-Packs Altaplex tent, and the Light AF Curve 40 pack. That is super light for a big three. I mean, 3 out of the 4 of those items are about as light as you can get. The sleeping pad is a little bit heavier because it is insulated and because it is a 4-inch plush pad. I don't care. I love it. And that, I forgot to get one more thing. I can't believe I forgot this. Rounding out the big three is the Nemo Philo Luxury Pillow. And it doesn't weigh a pound. I think it weighs about 8 or 9 ounces. It's obviously overkill for most people, but I'm a side sleeper. Side sleeping just requires a heavier loadout, okay? You need a thicker sleeping pad. You need a better pillow. You're on your side. You need something to go in there. I love this pillow. I've tried bigger pillows by Nemo. I don't like it. I just love this pillow. Shout out to Restless Outdoors for turning me onto it. I cut off the webbing on the back to save some weight. I've been using this for almost 2 years now, and this is an awesome pillow. That rounds out the big 3.5. We'll count the pillow. Another new item for this, I really do have a lot of new stuff. And shout out to my mother-in-law for getting me these for Christmas, because I went through like a bunch of trekking poles last year. I got the REI Flash carbon fiber trekking poles. They are awesome. They're a little bit more expensive than like the Cascade Mountain Techs, but they're lighter, and I really like the handles on them. They're super comfortable. And then, as always, I've got the Ultra Pod on here, and we'll go through the camera setup. I can still fit it on this Ultra Pod. I had to get this steak sack from Hilltop Packs because I'm always fishing around trying to find my steaks, and I wanted something bright, and it was a bonus that he put this "don't freaking lose me" thing on it. So the steaks I use, I've been using these for 2 years now after going through like a million different types of steaks. I love the MSR mini groundhogs. They're the perfect steak for me. I do carry 8 steaks for the Altaplex. You don't need 8 steaks, but it's kind of nice to have, and they don't weigh anything. So 8 steaks, MSR mini groundhogs, and the "don't freaking lose me" Hilltop Packs steak bag. Speaking of Hilltop Packs, so I'm not gonna lie, I don't know where it is. It's in my house somewhere. But my food bag, we've got a bunch of videos on it. We use the Hilltop Packs bear bag kit. It's the face bag. If you don't know what the face bag is, we have a whole food bag video. Check it out. I don't know where it is though. It's somewhere. I'll find it. This is what happens when you have a closet full of gear. You lose stuff. Next item. This is no surprise. Suck it, Kyle. The Helinox Chair Zero also in a Hilltop Packs Dyneema sack. Love this chair. Obviously, eat your heart out, Kyle. My water bottles have also changed. I don't tend to carry a smaller one up front anymore. You know, in the front pockets of the Light AF pack, I usually keep a cell phone and then something else. Sometimes it's bear spray. Sometimes it's the InReach. I just found myself, being able to get the water bottles out of the back pockets. So I just did that. But 1 liter Smart Water. And now I carry a 1.5 liter Smart Water. They just came out with this water bottle. And the reason I'm showing you this, most trips you do not need 2.5 liters, but on the Tahoe Rim Trail, you need to carry more water than I might need to normally. So I'm carrying a 1.5 liter and a 1 liter. Water purification has stayed the same for like the last 5 years. Always using the Sawyer Squeeze, always using the ever new 2 liter bag. I bought a new 2 liter bag because I thought this was going to break because I've been using it since 2015, which is insane, but it's still going strong. And then I've got a little scoop cup in there that I made. So this in the pack are literally, and like other things like the bandana, which I'll get to, are the only things that have stayed from the 2020 gear loadout. And that's because 2020 sucked. F 2020. Another thing that's changed this year is the stove of choice. And the reason this has changed is because Andy and I now almost primarily share a stove. And I implore you, if you always hike with more than one person and they're dependable, consider sharing a stove, especially if it's a canister stove. That's like the only thing I would say you don't need 2 of. We always carry 2 water bottles. but you don't need 2 stoves, generally speaking. So we found that if we take a canister stove and split the weight between us, it's lighter than an alcohol stove. But what that does mean is I do bring the Snow Peak 3.5 cup pot. And inside that, I do bring a separate other pot for coffee. And the reason being, I'm usually boiling water for both of us at once in this pot. And then I have this other one to, do coffee or something like that. And then tried and true Reflectix koozie, still going strong. But Andy and I do share a stove. That stove is the MSR Pocket Rocket. It's a great stove, been using it forever. And what happens is usually Andy will carry the fuel canister and we carry a bigger one. And I'll carry this, or sometimes we flip it around, or sometimes he carries the Snow Peak thing. It's just, we carry all this between the 2 of us, and that is lighter than both of us carrying alcohol stoves. And I don't want to boil water for 2 people with an alcohol stove. And then completing the food setup, and this is new for this year because I was just so freaking tired, of getting chili mac all over my knuckles with that foldable spork nonsense. I got a long-handled polished spoon, not a spork, and I love it. It doesn't weigh that much more than the foldable one, and I can get in those bags, get in those corners, and I don't get crap on my knuckles. Also new this year, I am back to carrying a dedicated knife, and this is a Kershaw knife. I don't know the exact model. I don't know, but it's a great knife. I got it on Amazon. It's not super cheap, but I am going to carry a knife with me on a decent amount of my trips this year. The main reason being, we've been doing more wood processing, and it's helpful to have a bigger knife for that, and just it's easier to cut cheese off with it. Bear line is, I always use this Dynaglide bear line from Hilltop Packs now. I really like it. It's waxy, and so it'll go over the branches easier, and then it's just so bright. When you have it out in the night, when you shine your beam on it, it just sticks out like crazy, and it's pretty light. So I carry 50 feet of that. That is overkill, but I don't care. There have been many instances where we have need to use cordage to repair things or stuff like that, and it's nice to have a little bit extra bear line. You do not need 50 feet of cordage for a standard bear line, but it's nice to have, 10 to 20 extra feet of cordage just in your bear line in case you need it. And there have been many trips where we have needed to use cordage. Always carrying a bandana. Always use it for everything. Wiping my nose, picking hot stuff up off the fire, everything. I also always carry now, and this has burned me in the past by not having it, but I always carry a 1 ounce MSR pack towel. It's 1 ounce. I can use, it's multi-use. I'm always going on trips where things are getting wet. It's just worth 1 ounce, and it's tiny, and it just fits in my pack, and it's not bad at all. And it absorbs a ton of water. All right, rounding out the stuff in the pack is, I'll call it my multi-purpose bag. And usually what I keep in here is I always carry my headlamp. I love this thing. This is the Nightcore headlamp from Lightsmith, 1 ounce, freaking awesome. We won't shut up about these headlamps. We truly love them. They work well, rechargeable, great. I always carry a Light AF first aid pouch for excess camera stuff, and I will go through all the camera stuff right after I do this. First aid kit, I am not going to go through this. It's got all the staples you need. Some things that I do a little bit differently than other people. I carry multiple patch kits for a sleeping pad. So I always carry the patch kit that comes with the sleeping pad. And then I always carry the tenacious tape repair kits from Lightsmith. I had to use one for the first time. I was terrified. I'd never popped a sleeping pad before. On our last trip, I popped one. And it was, oh my God, it's the worst feeling ever when you pop a sleeping pad. But honestly, I threw one of those Lightsmith tenacious tape pouches on there, and it fixed it. And it was not a small hole. I mean, like a 1 centimeter diameter hole. And the tenacious tape worked perfectly. So I carry extra patch kits. I carry 2 extra lighters. I carry 2 extra chapsticks. Yes, I have a chapstick problem. And that's about it on top of the first aid stuff. So I do just carry a little bit extra. It's worth a few extra grams to have solid patching, and it's worth a few extra grams to have unlimited chapstick. And then last is the poop bag. I mean, it's got everything. Wet wipes, hand sanitizer, and I keep the wet wipes in a separate bag in here so they don't dry out. So that's it for the stuff in the pack. I'm going to talk a little bit about what I'm wearing Now, I don't have them yet because they haven't come yet, but I bought the Ultra Lone Peak 4.5s. I always carry the Patagonia 9 Trails shorts, and then I always wear on top some sort of Patagonia Capilene dry fit shirt. So it's a dry fit shirt. It's the Patagonia 9 Trails trail running shorts, which are the best shorts ever. We haven't shut up about those for years. And then a pair of Darn Tough socks and the Ultras. So that completes kind of my hiking setup. And of course, the vintage SBO trucker hats. So let's talk about the camera, and I'll show you right now. The camera setup right now, and thanks to all of you for watching those ads and buying our merch. We've upped our production quality significantly. We are fully in 4K right now. We are fully color grading. I mean, everything has gotten better, but in order to do that, it requires a much heavier camera setup. We used to use the Canon M50s, and we still bring one. So Andy will bring the M50. But what I bring now is what you're looking at right now. This is a Canon EOS R6 with the Rode VideoMic Pro Plus on top of it. And I have two different lenses. They don't both come with me. The lens that primarily comes with me is a 35mm f1.8 lens. It's a great lens, but it's just a prime lens, and 35mm can be tricky to deal with sometimes. So on 1 or 2 night trips, I bring the big Bertha of lenses. I bring a Canon 15-35 2.8 R series lens. It weighs more than the camera itself, and it costs more than the camera itself, but it is an incredible lens, and it's worth the wait on trips that are of short duration. I will not bring it on trips more than 2 days. I mean, the lens itself weighs over 2 pounds. It's huge. It's expensive. I don't want to break it, but I will bring it on 1 to 2 night trips. Anything other than that, I'm bringing the 35mm, and you guys are stuck with maybe a little bit close up of my face, but it's worth it for the low light. And then lastly, I'll put the tripod name up. This is a great tripod. Devin from Backcountry Exposure told me about this tripod. It weighs under a pound. It's got a ball head mount. It only extends to 25 inches, which isn't great, but it's super sturdy, and it was fairly price manageable, and it's not bad for a carbon fiber, and you gotta have a ball head. And then I also bring an extra camera battery. So that is the camera setup. Canon EOS R6 with either a 35mm or a variable 15-35mm with the Rode VideoMic Pro Plus with an extra battery, and then also with an ND filter because it's sunny, folks. So that's the main setup I'm using this year. But I do want to talk a little bit about the other setups I do use. So for hammocks, I use a Dutchware Banyan hammock with the Light AF tarp with doors with an Underground Quilts Zeppelin 20-degree underquilt. That is my hammock setup. I used it last month. I will use it here and there this year. I will not be using it on the Tahoe Rim Trail because, as I said, the tree situation in some of the areas is a little bit dicey, and I don't know if I could probably get away with hammocking it, but I just don't want to be stressed about it. It's going to be the hardest hike I've ever done anyway, and I'm just going to rock the tent. It's lighter, it's easier. I don't have to deal with it, but I love the Banyan hammock, and we have a ton of videos on it. Check it out. Last setup, that is arguably the most fun setup, is we got a hot tent, folks. And in the winter, if we're going for less than 2 nights, which is every winter trip, we're using a hot tent. I'm not going to go into it. I've got a video, just an overview of the setup. Check it out. But it's a Wild Wild West titanium wood stove with a Lux Octopeak 6-person hot tent with the pole. So I might do an entire video just going more in, because the hot tent, we got saws, we got axes, we got a lot more stuff than just those 2 items with the hot tent, but that's it. So main setup is what you just saw. I'll be using that most of the year, if not all of the year other than winter. My hammock setup I use here and there. I already have a trip I'm planning where I'm using the hammock setup, and then the hot tent setup in the winter, and God, that's a lot of gear. Thank you all for watching. I hope your 2021 hiking seasons are off to a great start. Get outside. We still got this stupid virus, so use that as an excuse to get outside, and we will see everybody later.